Welcome back, guys. Today we meet a founder of an AI startup who raised over 2 million euros in funding with the aim of democratizing customer research and insights for everyone. Welcome with me, Nader, today. I'm happy that I have you here. If you want to say a few words about yourself, like for the audience, who you are, what you do, and what motivates you, please do so.
I'm happy to be here. My name is Nader. I'm a researcher at heart, basically. So I'm come from the social science and psychology background. Did my PhD in gamification, a term that I nowadays kind of hate because after 15 years, people still think we're turning everything into video games, which isn't true, which couldn't be farther away from gamification. And it's more about like motivational design. Basically, after we finished I finished the PhD with my co-founder who also did a PhD in the same department, same university. We first ran a digital agency. And after that, the idea for Experial came around where we said as researchers, everybody should have access to customer insights, not only we as researchers who know the space inside out.
Interesting. So you're kind of living a little bit the German startup dream. Sounds
Yeah.
like it, at least.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, turning from academia to the venture-backed startup world, basically.
Interesting. Okay. And when you say customer like research, do you want to tell the people a bit more like what are you trying to solve? What problem is there that companies have that you're trying to solve?
Absolutely. I think we have like an imbalance in the market right now. The one thing is nobody has ever said I enjoy taking part in like customer surveys, feedback surveys, and so on. So like the motivation on the one hand for us as participants isn't there, which leads to the problem data quality of surveys and customer insights tend to be kind of like low. And on the other hand, you also need researchers on your end to be able to run customer research effectively. You need some kind of like market research expert. And both problems get to a point where we have like low data quality, low like engagement rates on the participant side, and also this is a costly, time-consuming process because you also need the research experts on your end if you do it like internally or do it like with a market research agency or institute. While this is happening, the managers we talk to, the product managers, the innovation managers, and so on, need more and more customer insights. They cannot wait like weeks for getting some kind of like information back, which is currently the status quo. They want to have the insight basically today, tomorrow, next week when the board meeting is, and they want to present their new idea, their new campaign, and so on. And how the question we're asking, like, how can we increase data quality on the one hand, but on the other hand, also like be way quicker, way more cost sensitive to allow for a way bigger scalable process in customer research.
Okay, interesting. And of course, I took a look also in who invested in you, right? Of course, there were some like interesting funds from Germany, but I also saw that a specific professor from Columbia invested in your startup. And I saw that he was already like going in research field into this direction. But is there something like maybe interesting to share? Like how did that come across? How did they find you? How did that happen?
Absolutely. This is the professor you're talking to is Bernd Schmidt. I think like early 90s, he's a professor at Columbia, but is born and raised in Germany. And Toby, my co-founder, and me met him actually in our own studies. He was like a visiting professor. And we talked about like a lot of things, built the connection early. And once we started Experial, he was one of the first guys we talked to. And he was really, really interested in what we're doing because you can imagine AI will change how we do customer research fundamentally, like from top to bottom. And then he said like he wants to be part of this journey, which is a cool thing for us. And actually we are working with him like really, really closely, also like on research papers we're doing together. And he's like a mastermind in consumer research, doing this for like, I don't know, 3 decades now, and basically knows the space inside out, which is like a great benefit for us. And I really enjoy working with him.
Okay, interesting. And would you say from a startup founder perspective, was this connection already like there before you got the funding? I guess so, right?
Yeah. I think like he was actually one of the first people to invest in us. And the relationship made total sense. We didn't need to like do like a large due diligence with him. He basically said, "I like what you're doing. Would you be open for me investing?"
Cool. That's like the dream, right? Like
Yeah,
finding someone who
absolutely.
asks you to invest,
Absolutely.
even better. Okay. And do you think you can like assume, maybe you know, but maybe you don't know, what made him make the decision for your startup? Because that's, I think, something that a lot of people ask themselves when they start with the startup idea, right? Like,
Yeah.
how can I make my idea that good that people are thinking, hey, I want to be part of this? Do you know what he thought?
I actually know. Basically, from his perspective, he said in one of our talks, he basically have played through the academia game, so to speak. Like he was up until I think end of last year, the editor in chief for the Journal of Consumer Research, which is the highest ranked journal in consumer research. He published a lot of like what we call like A plus papers. I don't know how many he have. He has run like larger executive education studies, been obviously like a professor for Columbia for like 3 decades or more, published a lot of books. A few of them bestsellers, like was translated in like 25 languages. So he basically did everything that was possible for him in the academia and education space. And then for him, I believe was also like interesting, like, hey, let's put like an investment in a startup from guys I know and be also like learn a little bit more about that space and how this is basically like developing. And for him, I believe it was like a lot about like like this is interesting because I can now participate in something that is might be like industry changing and industry shaking, like not necessarily experial, but like where the whole industry is going to. And I think this was like one of the biggest points for him actually. Hey, do something new.
Okay, interesting. And do you have the feeling that the approach? I remember we had this discussion about research papers before as well, and I know, for example, the big companies, right, Google, Adobe, and so on, they all have their own research departments, and I have the feeling this creates some type of credibility also for the market, right? That the people who like researching that know what they're talking about, maybe on the one hand, but on the other hand, right, you're also like being transparent about what you did and not just like saying, hey, I have my AI black box. I'm not telling you what's in it, and you can give me money for it or not. But do you have the feeling that the like the strategy that you have with researching and publishing the research helps your startups in some way or form?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think like this might be like the like one big emphasis we have, because we are doing something with AI that is kind of new, that is basically changing the rules of the industry a little bit. And still, we have on the other side of the table companies who have to rely on what we are creating. If you have like AI generated insights, are they in the same way trustworthy as if you have run through the normal way, like with human based insights, so to speak? And if you can't close the gap, nobody will work with us if we are not like can show like from a credibility perspective, hey, you can trust this in the same way as human insights would. Actually, like on a side note, human insights also like heavily biased, heavily skewed. Yeah.
Sure.
There's a lot of like bias into like how we answer, but like at least get to a point where we have like human parity. And if you can't show that, I think once we're talking with our clients about we're doing research there, we're publishing, we're showing you numbers, this is what lead them to tend to, hey, let's go at least like in a POC or pilot with them to really check it out. And I think like this is one of our cornerstones.
And I think it's very beneficial that you have so many academia people with you, especially who know like what, for example, is required for marketing or customer insights. Because I think most people, to be honest, right, when they think about marketing, they think about people who are like doing gut feeling decisions. And then like, what do you write in a journal? Well, I write what I thought would be a good idea. But the reality is actually, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in all of these journals, they require to give a lot of statistical evidence before they allow you to publish it, right? Which makes everything a lot less, let's say, magic sounding and like it's some type of like some vague ideas that people have. But you really have to prove basically statistically that it is correct what you're claiming to be able to do, right? And I think that will be something for investors, I assume, right? Where they really start to build trust because you're not just saying you can do it, you can actually prove it with the methods we have today, right?
Absolutely. I think like like be transparent in how we're getting to the conclusion is one thing that you have to be able to show, as you mentioned, like, hey, this is no magic black box and something's coming out and please trust me, pro. Basically, no, it is about like showing the numbers, like showing the approach, and being kind of like transparent on it. This also like arises a certain degree challenge. We want to be as transparent as possible without giving away our blueprint on the other hand, because what we're building is obviously like proprietary and it's like our IP, and to once create the numbers that you can like understand, know, see, and build trust in us as Experial is one thing. On the other hand, not giving away like how we're doing it, because this is something that we are thinking around every time and every day. And that nobody can like read the paper and say, hey, they basically gave me the blueprint to also like copy us like in 2 weeks time. Not possible in 2 weeks time, obviously, but like the more we would like give away in such a paper, the easier it would be for our competitors to also like catch up. And this is like a delicate balance, but like as we understand the research and the science space, we don't have to be super open about how we are doing it. It's more about like write it in a way that you can like basically understand how we did it and where we are coming from without basically revealing the secret sauce, so to speak.
Okay. I think that's actually a pretty interesting spot to ask a few questions, because I think that's a skill that you have to develop to be, let's say, convincing in that matter. And especially I know that, AI people or data scientists, I have the feeling sometimes there's a little bit of a communication problem with like business people, because there's a potential to overwhelm people with too much technical information that they cannot comprehend anymore. But at the same time, you also don't want to like take away everything so that it just sounds like you basically just trust your intuition. Is there a specific way of method or like way of communicating how you did it? Like what would you say? What type of information about your models, for example, do investors want to know about? And what do they, for example, don't want to know about? And basically, they just trust you. This is like, you did your job. I trust the results. Is there anything you can share?
Yeah, I think like with investors specifically, I think there's this two-layered approach. The first one is basically in the first pitch, so to speak, or like in the first interactions, share enough that they understand there is a secret sauce and get a grasp of it. Once you are farther down the road, they basically want to see everything, but then you are like in a technical due diligence and normally have signed some kind of like term sheet, NDA, and so on. And then you have to be basically open up your books, so to speak. And then they're really challenging this, but they're also bringing on like outside counsel oftentimes, where people really skilled machine learning engineers will check out what we did, and also like reporting that back to the investors, that there's not only, once again, trust me, pro, sounds good, but like there's actually the code, the system, the machines, are there. In the first stage where we are talking and basically want to share it, you have to be like, I think everything like investors are no machine learning engineers, and they obviously serving the market. They're seeing a lot of AI companies, especially as of right now. And I think like they are getting the concept more and more and understands more and more with each investment and each startup they are checking out. And I think like the one thing you have to do in this, like what our approach is also like always create a certain kind of like mental model that you can understand. You don't have to understand how the machine learning approach works in detail, but like grasp the concept overall and explain to a degree why this works, and also why this is hard copy, that you're basically building like a defensible technology. And this is more on a level of like the mental model, kind of not high level. It has to be enough detailed for the investor to understand and really see the intricacies about it without giving away every secret, because the secret in the end lies in the code, and the code will be checked out once you have like convinced this first stage, like, hey, these guys are onto something. We want to invest, and then we basically do our due diligence, that we're checking out what they have pitched is also there in code.
Okay, interesting. And that's kind of based on a previous discussion I had with a senior data scientist from Henkel, actually, and he said something that I think is quite interesting, because he said, like, what do we do if the AI algorithms are all commoditized in a way, right? Because nowadays we all have access to ChatGPT, you have AutoML solutions and whatnot. And he actually said that the thing that makes most of the data science or AI solutions unique is actually the data that you used to train on them. Do you have the feeling that for your company, it was more the data that you had, that you were able to maybe also like use specific prompting techniques or something like this? Or is it really that you created a new type of algorithm that never has existed before and is basically non-existent in the market? What would you say is more true?
Two-layered answer to your question. I think like what we're doing right now, I think like the system we're building is currently creating like more value. And the system is set up that we are learning with every iteration. Like every product usage, every experiment we are running internally helps us to improve the system itself. So we are creating something that itself is unique and new, but it isn't to a degree defensible in the defensible setting that only we did that. So like we are coming up with an approach that other companies would be able to obviously copy. But I think this is true for the most tech companies. I think only like if you have like something proprietary in a way that you can't copy it with patents and so on, and even patents are not giving you like defensibility at all times, because you can like breach patents if you have like the money to go in that route, like happened before, like in tech space, right? But I think like the data we are gathering in that process is something that obviously makes us unique, and I think the combination of the two then makes it that we are building a system that is self-improving over time and will be fueled by data. Like the flywheel get quicker and more effective with the data we are collecting, and then we want to get to a point, or moving to a point where, hey, you can obviously copy anything, but this get increasingly harder over time. Like if you give us another month, another year, another 5 years, you will have to spend so much money to just catch up while we are like moving along. And I think you have to always have the combination of the two. Build a system that gets better over time, ideally with data and usage, which is unique to you, and then heavily focus on like getting that data into this flywheel, and then let it work basically. And this is like our approach. Both is really important, but I think like the data is something you can't copy if we have it like prior to, like from our IP perspective. The system is copyable, but if you find a way to combine the two, then you might be onto something.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. But because that's something I'm always wondering, like how much innovation can you really create in the code itself, you know? Because at the end of the day, it's components, and people read like they maybe stack together things differently, try out something. But as you said, the real truth or the real value is in what the pipeline basically has enabled the model to learn, right? And then for that you need the data. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Absolutely. But there's like to make that point, like there's really, you have to combine the two. Like we have like faced this question like, hey, there's a market research agency doing it like for 40 years now, have so much data on their clients. Do they not have like a strong advantage on things? And our answer is like, this data was not built and used in a flywheel, but it's just like ad hoc studies. They have a lot of data, but they don't know if 95%, 99% of it is just noise and doesn't really help you to get where we are. And like have a system in place that get fueled by data, not data itself. Data itself might be fuel, but might not work in your system. And you always have to think about like both sides of like, what is our system, how get our system better. And one part should be data we're infusing, but the data should be like not created, but like you're building your system around that. The data you are collecting is helping you get the flywheel going and add fuel to the fire. And this is something where oftentimes you can't really say, hey, we have like so much past data from the last decades, might not be like suitable for what you're trying to do. And therefore like the combination of the two and really put both in sync is something that is like really, really, really necessary.
Yeah, interesting. And would you say that, I'm not sure if that's something companies actively do or if it's just something that, you know, some people think about, but do you have specific things, for example, in terms of like ethics or human centeredness that you like, values or specific checks that you do to ensure that everything works fine? Or is it just something that comes natural because you have to be like reliable and robust to get investors in the first place?
I think like the second part you mentioned is something we obviously have to do, like build everything like robust and like effectively, while we are also like putting like a lot of emphasis on being like compliant both because like the enterprises we start working with demand that on the one hand, but on the other hand, because we feel like this is like also a thing we have we really have to do that like on our end as well, to not say, hey, we are building like a system and try to be like going to the in a gray area, gray zone, whatever, trying to do everything that is possible. I think there's like a large discussion about like IP law and LLMs coming from OpenAI, and do we really need IP law anymore and whatever. And this is something where we have like a strong stance on it, like, hey, we have to treat data confidential to a degree. To make like a point specific is we could easily go to and say like all the data we are collecting for our clients will be used in a like overall model, and basically competitors would have then, if they do it right, access to the data of their competitors, right? No, this is like a hard no for us. It's like we are getting better over every single client we have, but not by sharing the data they are collecting, but basically extract learnings from their usage and make the overall system better. And I think this is something we have to be really, really keen on, and really have like a strong internal stance on it. To basically do both, like, hey, build like a trustworthy system for our clients, but also be compliant as much as possible. And where we don't have to, then we can just focusing heavily on like what we can do to make our system better for our clients. I think like we are a customer insights company, right? We should put like the customer interest in the middle of all our thinking.
Yeah. And that's also something that I right, especially when you look at academia, right, you have this human-computer interaction side, you have some other people who do UX, others are marketeers, but at the end of the day, they all have the same interest in some way or form. They just like, for, I guess, historical reasons, are living in different bubbles. But you're right, yeah? At the end of the day, just because you don't call it ethical AI or human-centered approach to AI, right, just the fact that you are having this background and it's the industry you're in, you're like by nature already like following these values. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And maybe because we now talk quite a bit about like sort of like your approach, I think you at least got a feeling for what could be the building blocks. But can you maybe run us through one example, very easy example, for like a company problem that you solved with your solution, and why was it so valuable for others? What couldn't they get access to before that you now gave them access to, basically?
Yeah, obviously. I will talk about this like without naming any names, right? And going to like into the deep of like what we have like done. But basically think about like, hey, you have like we're talking about a retailer, specific product category for that retailer, and he wants to understand more about how people are using that category. And the normal approach would be create a survey, in this case for 25 questions. 25, most of them open questions, which is a new thing actually, allow us like with the LLMs, because and capture this data like text-based, voice-based, right? And basically ask them a lot of questions on their specific like category behavior, like how often do you use it, how do you use it, which brands do you choose, and so on and so on. And like the one thing, and now I'm basically have to think like how much like I'm talking now to make this like clear, is basically their question is how people interact with this category, and they want to have like specific like answers, really insights to get working afterwards, right? And what normal customer research is doing, we have learned about the last, I don't know, like 50 years, do closed questions, quantitative surveys. If you want to have scale, like I ask you on a scale from 1 to 7, how likely are you to buy that product? You click on a 6, and I can then compute 5.4 standard, right? Like in the middle of the scale over like 1,000 people, whatever. And if you want to do qualitative insights, which explain why people do things, or at least what they told you why they are doing this, is something you do like in a small scale, like 5 to 10, maybe 15 interviews or something like that. And what LLMs allow now is basically to combine the two, and not only combine the two, but like focus like heavily like on qual data, because this is explaining why people are acting. Like, for example, NPS score, right? Net promoter score. People click on an 8. I would directly ask, why, Nate? Can you explain your rationale behind it? If you click on the 3, same thing. Like, to combine the two is really, really valuable. And what we are basically doing to showcase, in that case, it was like a proof of concept for that client, is we are creating like a 25 question survey, kind of long, right? Most of the questions open, but you can answer with voice. This is what we've built. We have like an AI interviewer that is enabled to catch you, and we have like a conversation about it. It's not like question, but like you feel like you will be interviewed, but obviously the questions are like part of that interview. And then we can gather that data. We did 250 people in, I believe it was captured in an hour or 90 minutes, like through a panel provider. And what we do on the other hand is we create it with the same description of the target audience you want, and like an information about what is it about. 250 synthetic participants, which we call twins, right? Like digital customer twins.
Digital twins, okay.
Yes, and we run the same study with them, like same questions, same interviewers, same everything. And then in the end, we are looking about the answers and compare them, which we call recall, which is basically how much overlap do we have between like a human sample and a synthetic sample, which has no human data involved, just what we can like gouge out of the LLM to basically show you can trust the data we are creating, like with the synthetic data. Obviously, we'll use the answers from the 250 in our like flywheel and system like later on, but like just in a POC sense, we just like put the both against each other and basically compute like how close are we already without any prior knowledge about your domain. This is the first run we are doing with you, how good the synthetic answers are. Obviously, you know that, but I make this like a specific point, is if you have like qualitative data, you have to analyze them in a slightly different way. You really can't compute like, is there like a mean on the scale? You have to like look at like what people are saying, extract statements out of it, create like categories, clusters where you basically crunch the data together. And this is something that we are also doing within our application, that we have like built a multi-agent system that is do qualitative data analysis by hand. This takes minutes to run through 250 interviews basically, which is crazy if I compare it like in my PhD I did like 10 to 15 interviews by hand, and it took weeks, right, like to get to the point. And we basically built the system how science would do it, like 2 different like coders, experts running through that independently, then compare notes. If there is like deviations from it, they will discuss internally with a micromanager coming in and check that the discussion is fruitful, and basically end in a like a qualitative data analysis that is on PhD level. And so from start to finish, you basically can, I have a specific question, we can create the survey for you with AI, we can run like the data collection with AI, even interviewer to humans or interviewer to twins, collect all the data, and then analyze the data and get back to you like the most interesting insights from that study and answering the questions. How are people interacting with the category? What are learnings that we can directly leverage? And then you can run in the next one, in the next study, and go on like on a specific question. So we are basically trying to set up end-to-end market research. You have a question and you want to have the answers as quick as possible. And oftentimes we're starting with like, hey, let's start with a comparison of human data and synthetic data, just to show you this is already working, and this will get better by everything we are doing in your specific domain. With every question you have, every survey you have, we will just get better on the synthetic side of things. But the problem we want to tackle is be quick, be cheaper, be way more scalable. This is like the 3 value props basically we can like pitch to like our clients.
I could probably like spend now multiple days trying to understand everything of what you just said, and like try to go into every niche that you just open up. But look, sounds very, very, very exciting, I have to admit. But can you maybe just if you would say in one way, like I know people, for example, also like hearing like how much time did it save? Can you say for like just one case, what is the rate of savings, and or like how much time do you save compared to the old process and your process?
Yeah, at minimum 10 times quicker.
That's already crazy.
Yeah, 10 times cheaper. right?
Yeah.
Like at least. I think like we're talking more about like 50 to 100, but like at least like 10 times, because like this is like sometimes like hard to calculate right now, because we always start with like, hey, let's do
Sure.
like a human versus synthetic ones, and the humans are obviously the ones that is like the most costly and the most time consuming. But like if we would just run with synthetics and have them at the like the digital twins and have that at a rate that you also like trust in that, like have trust in like the answers, but we also can compute like how close are them to the humans, you would basically talk about like 100x. And this is, I think, the one thing we have to do, because in the future, with all the vibe coding tools coming around, with all the AI automations coming around, we will create more and more and more content, right? Like content in a creator sense, not content in terms of like LinkedIn posts, but like we will create your marketing ads. We will create we want to iterate our website quicker. We want to test every single screen we are building into an application, right? And we are way quicker in creating them, because the vibe coding will come. I think Figma dropped the bomb on the whole market with basically attacking Webflow, Framer, Canva, Lovable with their suit, right?
Everything,
And like everything on the creation side will becomes way cheaper. Code will be cheaper, design will be cheaper, content will be cheaper. And what you can't scale right now is like what works for the client, right? What works with your customer. And you have to have the same testing on the other hand. Like you can create now 10,000 landing pages, but to test which work, you can't really like publish 10,000 landing pages, right? You have to test it in the same manner you basically created it with the help of AI. And I think this will be like the really cool future. We basically say you can like create a lot of things, test a lot of different ideas, and then also like the testing has to be like my clients has to be there in a synthetic sense to be able to not create like this crazy imbalance of we can create so much things but we have no way of testing this. And this is basically where we are trying to close the gap on all the things that makes easy to create things, make it easy to test them directly with the customer.
Very interesting. That's something we have to discuss, I think, off topic, offline a bit more, because I actually also work on some research projects who are very similar to that. So very exciting, very exciting. Nevertheless, I would like to go to two more paths. I try to always like reach the spot at like 14 minutes more or less. So two questions. One question is, do you have a traditional product management in your organization, or is this currently still with you basically who are doing that, or do you have a separate like product manager? Right? Because there's lots of talk about this nowadays that they will get more and more replaced by like maybe technical roles or by the co-founder. How do you manage that at the moment?
As of right now, I'm basically have like the role of the product lead, because it makes sense, because I once like I've had that role like prior like in projects, and on the other hand I'm also like the domain expert. I know the customer research inside out, and therefore like I don't have like an additional part where I have to like talk to domain experts, because I am one, which raises another difficulty, because like I'm also doing like assumptions, right, which might like another product lead would not do. But I'm tackling this right now. On the other hand, and I can share like a little bit about like the next couple of weeks, we are currently like creating internally basically in product manager agent, where he will basically have like access to our like backlog, have access to the past sprints we have done, the tickets we have done, have access to like our documentation, and then can have like act as on a different level. Once he will basically can create things like on a basic level user stories, right? Like if like I'm saying like, hey, we want to do this and that, can you create the user story that we have like a specific like template for, like a specific way of working for? But also he can act as like, hey, please do a descope of the user story. We want to have an MVP on this, like, right, slice it down, store the things we have sliced out into another ticket for further usage. And also, and this is a part where like a product manager or product lead comes in, right, is we will create also, like we're using Slack, like a Slack bot. Basically, he's the Slack bot, and if a developer has a question on a business rule we made, on a question we had, this bot might be better suited to answer than me, because we had like a lot of discussions back in the day, right? Like we had a lot of like refinement sessions and whatever, and he has access to all that information, all that things, and can like directly answer to it. But we're not doing it like on a one-on-one that only the developer can see it. We're doing it like in an open channel that everybody from the development product team, basically development team, can see what is the discussion about, and then also like have a discussion internally. And we are going through that direction because there's a lot of like grunt work to do, basically, which can be easily be done by, not easily, but like effectively be done by an agent or an agent system. Actually, it will be more than one agent. It will be like multiple agents working together, but like the interface might be only one. But I think to have like an effective product lead still as a human with us is something we can't really replace off right now. I think there is a lot of talk about it, but I think the roles will change. I think the grunt work, like this will be done by agents effectively. I think you still need product leaders, but their role might be changing, and this is something we're looking upon, that this is not my role in the future, because there's like other things I have to attend to, cater to, like in the future, that we will hire like a product lead down the road. But this product lead has also to understand what can be effectively done by AI, and what is where I bring a unique perspective to the fold. And therefore, like, I think we will augment what we do in product with the product leaders, product owners, but their roles will change heavily. And this is what we are also striving for.
Very interesting. I think it will go. I agree pretty much with the direction you like project. I think it will go into the direction. That brings me to another interesting question, because like I assume you were also actively part of the hiring process of like your AI data experts. What would you say? What are you looking for? Because right, for example, right, when you look at most of the interview questions and so on, they always ask you to do some silly coding questions and be able to answer that. But what are you actively looking at, right? Because with the world where you have access to vibe coding or like AI assistants in coding, right? You cannot just measure someone's quality based on how good are they at pulling up a scikit-learn pipeline, because you can just ask ChatGPT to do that and it will be there. But what do you ask? What do you look for, basically? How do you determine if someone's a good fit or a bad fit?
Actually, heavily depending on the role, right? When we're looking for like an engineer in our product team, which is more classical software engineering. This is like different from what we are when we're looking at like a machine learning engineer who will have like a researcher role, not even like a machine learning engineer, but more like a machine learning researcher, to be exact. I think like you're directly going to it. Don't talk too much about code. I think like the Cursors and Windsurfs of the world are helping with that, but try to get more in a sense of like, do they really understand the concepts behind that? Like even like our engineers are working with Windsurf or Cursor, right? But you like this is like not, hey, they prompt it and put it on production. Like they prompt it as a first draft and then go through it and like make iterations. But in order to make the iterations, you have to understand what actually like the code is all about and what they are doing. So not buying into the notion like, hey, we can like replace all the engineers with that. I think we can make them way more effective, but they still have to be the supervisor, so to speak, at least for the AI coding agent that they're doing. And what we are doing, we are heavily focusing on, hey, this is a problem we're currently having within our research or within our like product. How would you tackle that? Like, how would you go about it, basically, to really check for how is their problem solving skill and how much do they know about the problem that they might have faced already, like in the past on another employee and another project, whatever, and then really be deep about this, why they are doing this or that, and not like, hey, this is code that works. Like this is like not the skill we're eyeing for, but like we have like a specific problem. We always share like a problem we really have, because we have thought about it already, and then we can like compare, right? Like, do they have like the same approach as us, a completely new approach as us, or no approach at all, and are kind of like swimming and don't know what they are talking about? And then we can really quickly assess, like, is their problem solving skills on the level we need, because we are running like in problems all the time, and Cursor and Windsurf helps you to be quicker on the solution, but not necessarily quicker on getting the problem solved, because you have to be the like prompt engineering still makes sense, right? If you can't describe the problem in an effective way,
Sure.
you will not be able to write even a prompt in
Coco.
Cursor or whatever, right? Like to make the code right for that problem.
Yeah. I'm very, very excited for that, like how it will evolve, because I think it's very helpful for people, right, who are maybe are coming from engineering, like to see, okay, what maybe soft skills am I lacking? So maybe I need to adapt on that. For me, for example, I would say it's rather the opposite, right? Like I think I understand methodologies a lot. I can talk confidently about most AI approaches, but for example, if you would put me on a spot and say right now the scikit-learn like pipeline by hand, right? You would see me struggle with that, just because first of all I don't like repeating myself and doing something which I know can be done in a second with ChatGPT. Why would I want to enjoy that, right? But yeah, that will be interesting, because I think you will probably also have in the future AI engineers or data scientists who, right, are not the traditional stereotype that you probably know from the past, right, which are good at math, necessarily good at coding, love to sit in front of a screen. Maybe it's people who love creating presentations, but they just know how to use or outsource basically the stuff that they're not so good at with AI, but right, in turn basically can maybe have better business conversations, right, and understand your problem really better, because that's where I'm coming from. So very exciting where this will head.
Absolutely. I think you have to have like a good grasp of what you're doing, but you don't have to
Sure.
do it necessarily yourself. And like even like in our internal discussions, it's like, yeah, I know I can do that, but I'm not great at it and I don't enjoy it. Why not
Yeah.
like push that onto like AI, like, and get you AI tackle that, right? And you can focus in where you have your specific superpower, but still you know enough that you can like leverage AI effectively, and once again like augment yourself and be way more effective, even with a smaller team, and you don't necessarily need to hire like a lot of engineers. I think we've seen that in the tech space, right? They are slicing down and reduce the workforce, but not necessarily because we don't need less engineers in the future. I think the demand will rise, but because like also the amount of like things we will create will rise. Like the need for digital solutions is at an all-time high, right? And it will just be more and more. But now we are creating a system where like the humans and synthetic workforce basically will blend more together, and everybody of us can be like a creator, which is a good thing.
Yeah, and it's the same. It's at the end of the day exactly what you do with experial, right? Like I'm pretty sure you and most people who are your customers, right, they enjoy speaking to clients, but they just noticed, hey, like might not be the most effective way to get to what would, because you're not speaking to the customers for the sake of speaking to them, right? You're trying to get an answer to a question, and if there's a faster way, why would you go the slower way? Makes absolute sense. Okay, one last question for today, and that would be going out to everyone who thinks maybe about getting like into startup space. Right, you were successful in getting funding. Pretty sure you've been part of a lot of pitches. Also saw other pitches, had conversations maybe with other founders of other companies. And I know that in Germany and in Europe, right, we always have all of the reasons why there are not so many unicorns, right? Which is most of the times it's bureaucracy. Americans are more bold, or any other reason that you can find. But what would you say is really the thing that people should take away if they want to become successful with the startup, that they should try to do in order to increase their chances, at least, let's say to say?
I just can like talk from my perspective on this, right? Like this is like not a general thing that you can like make a rule out of. But I think I read a book on this. Like I really can like recommend, called Pattern Breakers, which is like written from an American VC, like venture capitalist, who's doing this like for a lot of times and like invested in Lyft and so on, and try to be non-consensus, which is not contrarian, but if you are looking at your at a problem you want to tackle, and your solution is you're getting this is like a balanced field, like you're pitching your idea, and everybody says, yeah, this makes sense. You might not be onto something because it might be like too consensus, like too evident for everybody. If I go to you and pitch you, hey, there's like climate change, right? And we have to build more renewable energy, everybody will agree, right? Like,
Yeah.
but are you building something so unique that this makes sense? Because obviously a lot of people are building something in the renewable energy space, but
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
is it non-consensus? Non-consensus means still makes sense, but is something where you even get pushed back on, like, hey, I don't believe you. For us, the non-consensus is, will people believe in synthetically generated answers? This is the non-consensus part, because they say, like, this might hallucination. Why can you be sure about this? And this is like where the non-consensus for us starts, right? And not to be contrarian. I think contrarian is you're trying to build a future that is like way off from where we will be. And to be non-consensus is something like not everybody sees this, but you can come up with the conditions of when this will be, what needs to be happening for this to become the consensus. And this is what you are focusing on. And this will be giving you an edge, because we tend as humans always go in the consensus route, like trying to get like this positive feedback loop, right? Yeah, everybody's agreeing with me. 80% of my clients I've talked to want to buy this, right? And you might be going in the direction that is like too obvious, and there will be a lot of other players trying to do that. And if you focus on, hey, what will be true, but not everybody seeing this, and I'm calling it non-consensus, but the book and the authors call it non-consensus, you might be onto something. But this also means you will get hard questions, because people don't believe that. Like, the most people won't believe that, and you have to find the answers why you can not only get pushback, but also like have good arguments to explain why this future will still happen.
Brilliant. Like, I think it's a very good book. Can you repeat the name? What's the name of the book?
Pattern breakers.
Pattern Breakers. I
Pattern
think
breakers.
that's a very good book recommendation, not just for startup founders. I think for everyone
Yeah.
who wants to drive innovation in the world, in the business, in their life. Very cool. Awesome. So I think that was a good ending point for this conversation as well. Thank you very much. If there's any last message you want to send out to the world, feel free to do so. Otherwise, I just wish you a good rest of the day.
Yeah, thank you. I have read another book that I will share, which is called Do the Work, which explains how we are procrastinating. And to sum it up, the best way to do the work is just do the work. just get started. Like, don't think about it too much. Even if you want to chill on the couch, not do anything, just start with a minute. And after a minute, you can stop, and you will feel like if you get started in the first minute, you normally tend to go longer. And this is like what we are like, even like talk internally about, like, just do the work.
Nice. Perfect. Thank you very much. And see you in the next episode.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.